So our class is about magic. If it's about magic, then what are we looking at here? Favret-Saada argues that she takes magic seriously, and ethnographers and folklorists previously have not taken magic seriously. Previously, people would define magic, as she does on page 195, as a force allegedly different from those operating in nature or physics, i.e., empirically identifiable and measurable forces. So magic is thought to be something that operates outside of normal materiality. Magic here, however, in the Bocage is force. Now, previously we've heard villagers talk about, or we've heard Favret-Saada talk about vital force, but villagers just say force. And that force, as she writes in 197, can be defined as a capital or bioeconomic potential belonging to each possessor of a domain. This means to say that each possessor of a domain has this sort of bioeconomic, your livestock, the money you're going to make, your own very body. It's bioeconomic. Now, that's your livestock, your reproduction of your family, prosperity, and biology of the form. Now, however, the witches have something else. And she writes on page 195, there are beings who possess a magic force. And that magic force means that they have the capacity to increase their potential vital force without having to work, steal, or use any of the normal legal and economic means. The witch is able to use their force to pull the force of someone else to enrich themselves without having to, work or steal or do anything material. The force is different among the ordinary, the witch, and the unwitcher. Now, the force is not distinguished between the witch and the unwitcher. Favret-Saada argues that this magic force is pretty much the same in the unwitcher and the witch. What's different is the way they deploy that force. Whether a witch who takes from others, or you have someone else who's like an unwitcher who afflicts a witch, who returns evil for evil. The unwitcher will actually use his force to deplete the witch, to go and take prosperity from the witch, and theoretically return it to the one who has been bewitched. It's not clear how this force is returned to the bewitched, or whether the spells now stopping causes everything to return to normal prosperity. Maybe the bewitched just comes to like their normal productive state of being once they're not afflicted by spells anymore. So ordinary folks do not have manipulation of force. If you're a normal person, you're like, your domain is completely controlled by your own abilities, by your own force. These are people who don't have magic. Magic is the deployment of force. Now, outside of magic, the force of the ordinary person just remains. It doesn't circulate. It just stays in their domain. It just stays in their area. So force exchanges show the dynamics of force and witchery. Now, we know that there are no witches actually doing spells. So the unwitcher is actually doing rituals for imagined witches, doing real spells against spells that never actually happen. Now, the unwitcher may give charms or do rituals or give them special salts, but the real force is not the rituals they do, but the personal power, the personal force of the unwitcher. I would argue that the ritual technologies actually bolster the personal force of the unwitcher. And those same technologies, those ritual technologies of the charms and the salt and whatever they leave behind, that is a remnant of the unwitcher hanging out when the unwitcher is not physically there. So that if the witch attacks them, these traces of the unwitcher and the charms and the amulets and the bent nails will affect the witch. It's like the unwitcher is there even when they are not there. Now, the witch is filled with force. And in fact, it has this excessive surplus force. And it's compelled by that excessive force to act. The lore says they have to do one trick per day. They have to always be using the tricks. Now his excess force, the witch's excess force, enters the domain of the witch. And once he enters there, he drains and takes from the bewitched. So yeah, his excess force enters the bewitched. The witch enters the bewitched, pulls out energy, and puts that which is stolen into his own domain. In this sense, we see that the witch is actively deploying force to remove the force of others. So if you think of the witch as a negative and you think of the bewitched as a positive, the witch is actually taking the positive out. And because it's negative, putting that positive into himself. Now, the witch is more powerful when his identity is unknown, so nobody can do anything. And when no magic force, no insulator against his witchcraft is at work. So when an unwitcher comes in, the witch is less effective. When an unwitcher or someone uses or has strong blood, or someone has charms and countermeasures, that will cause the witch to not be able to circulate as freely. The interesting problem with the power of the unwitcher is I keep misspeaking. The interesting problem with the power of the witch is you can only know how powerful the witch is when an unwitcher comes and deploys their unwitching. And then they go, oh, very stronger. Oh, not so strong. So the power of the witch cannot be known until something's working against it. The spell's power cannot be known until the anti-spell. And of course, we remember, nobody's doing this. There are no actual rituals of witchcraft. All right, I'll be right back.